Good evening on this cold, almost winter night. If you'll just bear with us for a couple minutes. Here we go. Welcome to the Town of Avon Advisory Plan Commission meeting. If you're interested in having a copy of the agenda, they are available on the tables to the right of the audience. We will be conducting business as outlined on the agenda. From time to time, the board may deviate from the agenda, and as president of this body, I will inform those in attendance of any deviations. This meeting is being recorded for the public record. Because of this, we request that personal conversations are kept to a minimum. In fact, I would encourage you to take them outside into the lobby, and that all cell phones are set to vibrate or turned off. Any phone calls should be taken outside of the chambers. If you are interested in commenting during the public hearing portion of the commission's deliberations, please sign up on the sheets located on the tables to the right of the audience. When your name is called, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Please address your comments to the board and not to staff or to the petitioner. Your comments should relate directly to the case at hand. During the conduct of the public hearing portion of the commission's deliberations, the petitioner will have 10 minutes to present their case to the commission. Remonstrators will also have 10 minutes total to present objections to the petition. Persons in support of the petition, other than the petitioner, will have an additional 10 minutes to present support for the petition. And finally, the petitioner will close the public hearing portion of the presentation with a 5-minute rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed, no additional testimony will be heard unless it is solicited by members of the commission during the question and answer phase of the deliberations. Subdivision plat and development plan petitions are ministerial requests, meaning that if the proposal meets the requirements set forth in the town's development ordinances, the Plan Commission must approve the request. In the interest of transparency, state law requires that the Plan Commission hold a public hearing, even if the development proposal must be approved. Responses to public comments and questions may be given once the public hearing portion is closed. We understand there may be several persons who wish to speak. In order to keep the meeting running in a timely fashion, we would request that you not repeat previous comments. And this is particularly important considering that there is a time constraint. Thank you for your assistance in facilitating a respectful, fair, and timely meeting. Welcome to the meeting, and please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's do our roll call.
Zuzum.
Present.
Kuchenberger.
Here.
Ransberg.
Here.
Kaufman. Reed.
Here.
Rockebrand.
Present.
Spencer.
Here. We have a quorum. We now move on to approval of the meeting minutes from November 25th. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes? Need any changes or edits?
The only question I have, Linda, is on the Meyer rezone, and number one, it says a 50-foot half right-of-way shall be dedicated along the entirety of County Road 900 and a 60-foot. Is that right, or should they both be 60?
There are two different, the streets are two different classifications, so they required, per the thoroughfare plan, two different amounts.
Thank you.
Any further edits or questions? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
I make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Having heard a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Meeting minutes are approved. We're now moving on to the public comments portion of our meeting. This is an opportunity for anybody present to speak about anything that is not on tonight's agenda. If you want to say something about what's already on the agenda, wait for that time. But otherwise, if there's something else you'd like to bring up, like the Christmas decorations or anything like that, this is the time to do that. So would anyone like to speak to anything not on tonight's agenda? Okay, having no one step forward, the public comment section is closed. Request for continuances or agenda modifications. I understand we have a few.
Thank you, President Ransberg. Yes, we have staff has 4 continuance requests, which will lighten your load a bit tonight and get you to what I think most everybody is here for. Starting with ZA 2412, Family Promise Phase 2, 116 to 128 South Avon Avenue. This petition needs to be requested in order for the required introduction to town council to occur before the plan commission hears it. I will accept blame for not making sure that got scheduled, despite the changes to the calendar. So that needs to be continued to January 27th. We did already publish that in the newspaper, so it would be without additional published notice. But despite, I think, what was indicated in the staff report, it's my understanding that the petitioner did not mail out notice because they found out this would need to be continued before mailing notice, so they're going to do that for the January 27th date.
Okay. Any questions to staff on this request for continuance? If not, I'll entertain a motion to continue.
I move that we continue ZA 24-12 Family Promise Phase 2 to the January 27th, 2025 hearing without additional published notice, but with mailed notice to be sent by the petitioner.
Second?
Second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we'll take a vote.
Rockabrand,
Yes.
Spencer,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Ransberg,
4.
Guckenberger,
Or.
Zuzen.
4.
Motion carries, and the ZA 2412 agenda item shall be continued to January 27th. We have a
Thank-
second request?
Yes, thank you. DPR 2416, Family Promise, also known as Lofts of Avon. Staff is requesting that this be continued likewise to the January 27th hearing. This continuance request is because we determined that a variance would be needed before this development plan could be heard and approved by the commission. The variance has been filed for and is pending and would have been heard before your hearing if your hearing hadn't been moved up a week due to the holiday. So for that reason, we request that this be continued to January 27th, and likewise, it would be without additional published notice, but with mailed notice still to be sent by the petitioner.
Are there any questions for staff about this request for continuance? If there are no questions, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to continue DPR 2416 Family Promise Lofts of Avon to the January 27th meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we'll take a vote.
Kaufman,
4.
Ransberg,
4.
Guckenberger,
Or.
Zuzen,
4.
Spencer,
4.
Rockabrand,
4.
Reed.
4.
Motion carries, and DPR 2416 is continued to the January 27th meeting. Next,
Thank you. ZA 2411 Whispering Pines South at 1520 South County Road 625 East. Similar to the first continuance request, this also needs to be continued in order to have the required introduction before the town council before being heard by the commission. We did advertise this in the newspaper, and it's our understanding that the petitioner has done the required mailing of notices. So this would be to your January 27th hearing without additional notice.
Any questions for staff regarding the motion to continue? If there's no motion, we'll entertain if there's no questions, we'll entertain a motion.
I move that we continue ZA 24-11 Whispering Pines South to the January 27th, 2025 hearing without additional notice.
You have a second?
Second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we'll now take a vote.
Reed,
4.
Rockerbrand,
4.
Spencer,
4,
Zuzen,
4.
Guckenberger,
4.
Ransberg,
4.
Kaufman.
4.
Motion carries and ZA 2411 is continued to the January 27th meeting.
Thank you. And finally, WC 2401, which is a request to modify written commitments from a prior rezoning. This is also for Whispering Pines South at 1520 South County Road 625 East. And because the request to modify commitments is related to the request to amend the zoning map to allow for the desired development by the petitioner, it makes sense for both of these to be heard together. So because the zoning map amendment was continued, needed to be continued, this should as well be continued to January 27th and likewise without additional notice.
Are there any questions for staff regarding this request for continuance? If there are no questions, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to continue WC 2401 Whispering Pines South without additional notice to the January 27th meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we'll now take a vote.
Kaufman,
4.
Ransberg,
4.
Guckenberger,
4.
Zuzen,
4.
Spencer,
4,
Rockerbrand,
4.
Reed.
4.
And the motion carries, and WC 2401 is continued to January 27th. I would ask staff to keep an eye on the length of the agenda for January 27th. So, okay, moving on. There doesn't appear to be any old business. We now move on to new business.
Okay. Members of the commission, this is for the Aspen Trace preliminary plat located at the intersection of Dan Jones and County Road 100 North, just north of Sycamore Elementary School. The school is included within the plat as a block to be split off and remain as a school, but it's still part of the plat because part of its land's included in the overall plat. Total of 76.94 acres, zoned R2. This is the subject site. Again, the Sycamore Elementary School here. There are 2 properties that the school owned, split here in the middle. To the east, we have a single-family residential neighborhood known as Forest Commons, developed within the county. To the north is one called Wall Street Heights, also within the county. Then the Avon Middle School North is to the east. I'm sorry if I said Forest Commons was to the east. It's to the west over here. And then south is the Kingsway Church. And you also remember at this intersection is where the Wawa was approved. The request before you is for 129 single-family residential lots. They have requested no waivers, and it's coming before you from Pulte Homes. This petition was amended since the notice went out. It went out with 131 homes. There was some redesign to remove a waiver. So 2 lots were taken out of the plat when that waiver was removed. They removed one of the cul-de-sacs and straightened out the street, so there are no waivers requested. This plat was filed prior to the change in the UDO, Unified Development Ordinance. If you remember, in September, town council took out the enhanced lot standards that you would get if you met the enhanced design standards. But this plat was filed prior to that change on September 12th. Therefore, they fall under the old ordinance, or the ordinance before it was amended. So they are allowed the enhanced lot standards in the R2 classification. This property has been zoned R2 since its annexation in 2003. So it did not go through a rezoning process before this body or before town council when it was annexed into the county, or from the county into the town. This subdivision would gain access on 2 access points from Dan Jones, one on the northern end and one where the existing school access point is. There's an existing stub within Forest Commons called Buttercup Court that would extend into this development. And let me show you those here. Now, this is the overall subdivision. So one on the north end of the site, north of the existing kennel, if you're aware of where that is. And then this here is where the existing school access point is, that would be turned into an actual road, and then the school would continue to have access to that new road. And then up here is Buttercup Way from Forest Commons that would be extended into this development from that subdivision. Again, the enhanced lot standards that they have a right to under the previous version of the ordinance in the R2 allows for lots of 7,200 square feet and a minimum lot width of 60 feet. And all of the lots meet those standards. Sidewalks would be required internal to the subdivision on all streets. And then an asphalt path is required along Dan Jones. The open space being provided would be 27% when they are required 8%. I go back to, so I believe most of the remonstrance here is from the Forest Commons subdivision. We did want to note that the majority of the lots do not abut that subdivision, that it's primarily the drainage ponds here or the residual or what's going to be left on the school property. And then the lots on the north end either match or are wider than the homes within Forest Commons. Staff is recommending approval due to the plat's compliance with the UDO. All waivers, any waiver that was requested was removed. So there are no waivers before you today. And we make our recommendations subject to the 4 standard conditions that you typically see for any preliminary plat. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
I would like to ask a quick question for our esteemed town attorney, just to remind everybody here. This is a plan approval, so this is a ministerial request, correct?
Yes, you are correct. Yes, you are correct. If it meets the standards of the UDO, then the decision is ministerial, meaning you must approve it.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure we all understood that. Questions for staff?
That 27% open space, does that include any of the land around the school, or is that just north of that?
That does not include what would be on, that does not include any of this area here. It's all within the subdivision itself.
So then just north of where that house is, where you've got it carved out, is that common area CA and common area north? So that's open space there then?
Here,
Yeah, well, that's the house, then right below it.
that is common area. This is not a house, that's a dog kennel.
Okay. Thank you. Then your road cuts on Dan Jones, are those aligned with the school's road cuts on the opposite side of the street?
This one already aligns, and there's not one up here.
Okay.
But it meets distance separation from the road north.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff? Okay, we'll have the petitioner come forward.
Handouts too. I have a hard copy presentation, but if you prefer to have write notes on, I do, so I've had those. Good evening and happy holidays, and your decorations do look very festive. My name is Melissa Gerard. I am the manager of land planning and entitlements for Pulte Homes. And I want to take a minute to, gosh, that's loud, to talk to you a little bit about this project because it's kind of tied in with the Whispering Pines one that got continued. So Pulte actually has under contract about 78 acres west of the high school. The school wants that and has apparently been trying to acquire it for many years for expansion purposes of the high school. Their demographic studies are telling them that they don't necessarily need another elementary school, but they feel that if they do need one, there's enough land on that property next to the high school that they could do whatever expansions they want to do with the high school and also put a new elementary school there. So we have entered into a swap agreement with the school corporation and the building corporation. They looked at what they owned and they came up with Sycamore and Whispering Pines roughly are 80 acres and the 78 acres that we have at the school. We are going to also be paying them a substantial amount of cash as part of the swap. But the proposal is that they trade those two pieces for us and then we would trade and acquire for them and convey to them the property west of the high school. So we've been working on this deal a really long time, probably over a year. We had always planned on using the architectural enhancements. And so we had to get this on file quickly when we found out that those were going to be not an option for us anymore, but suffice to say we got it filed in time, and but we had always planned on it for this project. So as you can see, Linda covered a lot of this really well. This is kind of the area involved. The school, the site, actually what you can see, everything south of kind of that tree line is not part of the swap. We are, however, platting it as a block because we would have to do some sort of minor plat anyway to accomplish the division of that parcel so that it could be conveyed to Pulte. And the town has also requested upgraded right-of-way dedications along both 100 North and also Dan Jones Road. So including the block on the plat allows us to give you the enhanced right-of-way dedications, or allows the school to do that. So this is the proposed primary plat for the property. Linda covered the entrances. As you can see, we've tried really hard to buffer the Forest Commons neighbors with the water where we could. And then up in the northwest corner, those lots meet or exceed the sizes of the lots along Forest Commons. The lots to the north, those are deeper. They're not necessarily as wide, but that subdivision to the north is on well and septic. Or wait a minute, it's on septic, but it has water. I saw the water hydrants, but I did confirm with WCCD that it is on septic. I think their plan would be, if this subdivision were to go forward, that they would institute a project to bring E1 low pressure systems to that subdivision to the north. And I've got a lot of comment from the neighbors about the connection at Buttercup to Florence Commons. Your UDO actually requires that we make that connection where there is an existing stub. So we've provided for that in this plan. The southern entrance, our original design did not include the southern entrance on Dan Jones. That was inserted. I had a series of meetings with both the Forest Commons Homeowners Association and also the school organized 2 meetings as well. And one of the comments I got from the Forest Commons Homeowners Association is that they would like that to be improved as a full street. I think it gives them direct access to the school without getting out on 100 North. I may come back to this here. These are some of the homes that we propose for this subdivision. They range in square footage. These are base square footages, and with options, it will be more, from 26 square feet to 2993, so almost 3,000 square feet, with one ranch model that would be offered at 1,900 square feet. I'll go back here. The concept plan includes 330 feet of path and trails to the school, and approximately 1,300 feet of trails along Dan Jones for a total of 1,649. The open space, and to Commissioner Zuzin's question, I think we have not included any of the land on the school for the purpose of denominator in calculating our open space. We took it, the numerator, sorry. We calculated both ways, with or without the denominator. With block A included in the denominator, we're at 18%. If we subtract it out of the denominator, we're at 27%. Either way, we comply. But we have not included counting any of the school property or the retained block A parcel in our open space calculations. So we feel like, 27%, keeping the school property out of the calculations for the numerator and the denominator is the fair way to calculate it. I have gotten some comments, questions about building materials. We would have all hardy plank. Frankly, Pulte doesn't really do vinyl anywhere in Avon anymore. So that would all be hardy plank. So I've also had some questions about property values. We did an analysis of property values of everywhere. This is sales within 1 mile in the trailing 12 months. And we got an average of 375 on a weighted average and 415. Our anticipated average sales price is $430,000. And we think the range will be from about $400,000 to $525,000 and over that even. So that's well in excess of most of these comps that we found. So we think it's a good fit. I've also gotten questions about the timeline. So we think that the land development phase would probably take place over 2 years, probably working from north to south, and that the construction would probably take about 3 years coming on after the first year of land development. I got a few remonstrance letters in the mail today. One is the kennel. And as to, I would also note, so I need to cover a couple things. The Forest Commons neighbors actually asked us to limit construction access off of Buttercup Lane. We have done that. I have provided you commitments limiting construction access to the 2 Dan Jones entrances and limiting any sort of access of that sort on Buttercup Lane. I don't know why it would be more convenient for them to go that route or not, or anyway. We have also provided some restrictions on rentals, and I don't want to get into a whole detailed discussion, but we've provided caps, we've provided maintenance plans, we've provided limits on the number any one person can own, we've provided defined the circumstances that would constitute hardships. We've really tried to hone in on that. As a practical matter, we don't think that you can necessarily take that bundle out of the property rights that people would have, but it's not our intent to develop this as a rental project. This is intended to be a for sale project. The kennel contacted me and wanted to talk about some protections for the kennel. I am willing, and I told them this, I'm willing to talk about, and we can have a dialogue about, we think it's the right thing to do disclosures to our homeowners, and we're prepared to do that, both at the time of sale and in the covenants for this subdivision. Apart from that, though, I don't know that we're going to be prepared to offer anything physical or construction-wise. The parcel that is the kennel right now is still in the county. It is zoned agricultural residential in the county. Avon does not have any requirement to buffer residential to residential. Now, technically speaking, the kennel would not allowed to be there under today's ordinance, the 2008 ordinance in the county. The kennel is only allowed in a general business or a highway business. It's only there because it's been there a long time and it's a non-conforming use at this point. But I don't think that you necessarily have a duty to protect a non-conforming use. I mean, they're allowed to be there, but they're not necessarily entitled to the same protections that a legally conforming use would be entitled to.
Your time is expired.
Okay. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll be back on rebuttal.
Okay. Is there anybody here who has signed up in support of this proposal? Okay. Has anybody here signed up to remonstrate against this proposal? And we've got people who've signed up, and I would ask that you keep your comments to less than 2 minutes. We've got several people signed up. Pay attention to what is being said. If someone else says something that you were going to say, please allow someone that has something different to speak so that all the concerns are being heard as opposed to a repetition of the same concern. There'll be 10 minutes total. So please keep that in mind and be considerate of your neighbors. Who's the first person that signed up?
They may have just walked out. Clark Brady.
And please state your name and address.
Clark Brady, 7539 Meadow Violet Court. I'm the president of Forest Commons HOA. I'll just, won't go into all the details, have several topics to raise and maybe some notes that will require some further follow-ons. One of the primary concerns of Forest Commons neighborhood is drainage. This property is downstream. There's already some concern of how much drainage there is. We appreciate they've created ponds, done some things like that. We understand that the drainage cannot be totally worked out before this proceeding takes place. We would really want, though, to place a note that we are concerned and want to make sure that the adjustments would be appropriately made to this property, to this plan, if drainage is not sufficient. I believe that the drainage will need to comply with Avon and Hendricks County since we're downstream from there. Any question before I go on?
This is your opportunity to speak.
The pond in the south pond that's on that property map, the UDO calls for access, and I'm unclear that there was access that would meet that 7.20C2 paragraph. You're listed as open space as 27% or some variation of that. The UDO gives a definition that open space should not consider or should not include retention or detention ponds in the calculation. I believe to get to that percentage, you have to have included that. We appreciate Melissa raising the concern, and actually Pulte hosting the meetings. They have been very communicative, and appreciate that. But we did raise the issue about the dog kennel, and we would request that there's somehow a notification would be incorporated so that this issue does not get raised to the town council in the future. We live approximately 3/4 of a mile from the kennel. We hear the dogs in our house. Great. We're not going to hear them as good because there'll be houses in the way, but the people that are right beside it are going to be affected, and unsure how to address that other than what's been noticed. The cul-de-sac that's listed, that's shown, I don't know that this is a public safety, is properly planned for public safety. We have a cul-de-sac called Good Night or Goodbye Circle. Sounds like goodbye means someone's going to drive right through that circle into the pond. There aren't too many other ponds in this area that are located like this where a person would drive straight into the pond. Ponds that have a cul-de-sac typically have homes in front of them, or how the traffic way goes beside the pond doesn't terminate into it. We appreciate that there has been some notice by both comments before about the enhanced lot standards not being applied. However, there are specific dates and times which should be brought forward. Right now, we've had statements that it doesn't apply. I would appreciate, and I think it is, the due diligence needs to be applied. When was the plans presented? When are the cutoffs? I think we need to be very specific about that. The town council and this group specifically indicated that the enhanced standards are not for the future of Avon. And I think this is one of those things that we need to be very specific on the dates.
You've reached your 2 minutes. Thank you, sir. Next.
Max Ellis.
Thank you for making the time to hear my comments, commissioners, and I want to thank the previous gentleman. I'm one of the proprietors of BNS Sporting and Grooming Kennels. Excuse me. A little bit of background. We've been around since 1974. Me and my buddy Brendan were the 4th generation of owners. We actually have the 3rd generation of owner, Kyle, here with us tonight. As a lot of you probably are aware, but probably aren't intimately aware, dog kennels can get very loud. As the previous owner, or as the previous neighbor mentioned, he can hear it from almost an acre away. What I would like to see ideally is there are sound mounds that protect from the street to the houses, but there's no sound mound protecting the kennel from the houses. This is more for the residents. It's not for us. They're already going to be building the sound mounds. Just a couple more would make these houses a lot more tolerable. On top of that, we'd like to see some trees, ideally, because again, it's the 4th of July. You're trying to have a family barbecue, and you're seeing and smelling a lot of dogs outside. That's our busiest time of year. So I'm trying to look out for the residents. One thing I would like to look out for us is maybe limiting fireworks. A lot of dogs get stressed out by fireworks, especially around the 4th of July. We're always trying to take care of the dogs. So one thing I'd like to ask for. But yeah, really appreciate you guys hearing me.
Thank you. Next.
Brendan Guerin.
Hey everyone, thanks for the time. I'm one of the other owners of BNS along with Max. I think in addition to the concerns that he raised around the fact that those properties are going to butt kind of right onto the back with kind of nothing in between them as of right now, would just be kind of access to the facilities. We've run into this at different times as the Avon area has grown up over the time that BNS has been around. And so I think, making sure that it doesn't limit customer access during the, kind of 2 years of land development, the 3 years of vertical development. This is something that we would love to work proactively on. The more notice we get of this, the easier it will be on our behalf to communicate this with our customers, ensure there's no confusion. We've seen this be an issue in the past. And so that's something we want to get ahead of. And then I think, yeah, I mean, other ways that we can figure out the noise element and that sort of things. Of course, we comply with all the, local ordinances around sound and that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, we're dealing with dogs. They're having fun. They're out in the yards playing and that sort of stuff. So there's going to be sound. And so that's something that we want to make sure that we can address together proactively. So yeah, that's a summary of our concerns. Thank you.
Next.
Looks like Matilda Corona.
I am, but I do not speak English good. Sorry.
Okay. Next.
We have James Meyer.
Thank you for the time to address this group. I'm a property owner on the north side of this subdivision, and the concerns that I have to do with surface drainage on the water. I know they talked about the retention ponds on the west side, close to Forest Commons. Also on the north side, and I've talked to the people in the Planning Commission about it, there is a county drain of which I have legal access to. That county drain is on the property, and I don't know if the developers are aware of it, but our surface water is tied into that. So I hope that would be addressed, and I would hope that surface drainage problems would not be inhibited. I noticed that there is a drainage and utility easement on the north side. I've got a plat of it. I would like to know how that is going to be graded, and will the surface drain work for the adjacent landowners to the north? Also, we've lived there for several years. There are some areas of the platted area that look like they could be considered wetlands, and I wonder if there's been an environmental study on this property.
Excuse me. Could you give us your address, please?
7817 Walnut Drive. We have 3 properties.
Please speak into the microphone, sir. Thank you.
7817 Walnut Drive, Wall Street Heights, and we have 3 of the properties that would butt up against us. Okay.
Thank you.
Next.
Looks like we have Ken and Sandy Nichols.
We have time for one more. Next.
Mike and Kathy Jeffries.
My name is Mike Jeffrian. We live at 1499 North County Road, 800 East, which is directly across from this proposed construction site, homes. My concern, we've been there about 10 years, and traffic on Dan Jones Road has gotten considerably worse. It's tough getting out of the drive sometimes. Their North Drive is going to be, actually, I think it's across the street from the parking lot, baseball field parking lot of the school there. And I guess my big concern is the traffic problem that this is going to cause. You've got the schools down there on 10th Street. They let out in the afternoon. They have a tough time getting out now. I don't know how they're going to get out of that South Drive once they build this place. So anyways, traffic is a big concern. I was in industrial commercial construction all my life, downtown Indianapolis. And the question is, Dan Jones Road, a 2-lane road, I don't think is going to handle all this extra traffic and the school traffic. And there may be plans to make a 4-lane out of Dan Jones in the future, but that's going to be some time, I'm sure. So the question is just the influx of traffic that this is going to create, and some I think real problems with the schools down there. That's it in a few simple words.
Thank you for participating. Okay, thank you so much. Would the petitioner like to offer some rebuttal.
Can I get the slide coming up real quick? I did have a call with Mr. Brady. We did talk about a few things. I will say on the drainage, we are still trying to figure some things out there. We do know that we're going to have to go to Hendricks County and talk to Mr. Gaston about the approvals for the outlet. We have done some homework. This property is supposed to drain and does flow from east to west. It was supposed to be carried through Forest Commons there's a 150-foot wide drainage easement running through Forest Commons. We checked, there's a structure that is supposed to convey the water from this farm field over through to the natural water course in Forest Commons. Our engineers went and looked at the county, the design specifications. Suffice it to say, this pipe at Forest Commons has not been installed per the design specifications. It's several feet too high, and ironically enough, it slopes the wrong way. It slopes back to the school property, the Sycamore property, which actually serves no purpose right now in terms of conveying the property where it's supposed to end up. So we don't know why that was, and it's an older subdivision, and we don't know why it was installed improperly. We're trying to get our heads around that. We may have to make off-site improvements. We understand that. That's something that we're going to work out with the county, but if we can figure out what the solution is and what the problem is, it should improve drainage for everyone out here. The open space criteria, your ordinance does allow inclusion of the ponds if certain criteria are met. We specifically went through a review with our engineer to determine if we met those criteria, and we do. But suffice it to say that we're at 27% open space, and it's not all ponds at this point. We've lost the cul-de-sac, which is now all open space, where the cul-de-sac, the small cul-de-sac was, and there's quite a bit of additional open space. The kennel, and the goodbye circle. We will put, and I know Mr. Ilko's weighed in on this before, we will put bollards around any place where we don't have sufficient separation from the back of curb to the top of bank. And we do that in pretty much all of our subdivisions in Avon. So we will do that. In terms of the kennel, we will provide enhanced disclosures. I've invited the owners to talk to me about what they would like to see in the disclosures that go to our homeowners, specifically in documents that they would have to sign off on at closing, but also documents that would be recorded in the covenants, so that they would be perpetual and run with the land, and subsequent owners would be on notice of them as well. We will not do sound mounds. We don't have room, and they're not required by the ordinance. And in fact, I don't think that there's really any reason to require us to buffer against a non-conforming use. The R2 district allows us to develop this property as we're proposing. The trees, we do actually have trees though. Those are in our landscape plans. There are some against the back of those lots. There's also quite a bit to the north and south of the kennel. Limiting fireworks, again, I don't see any reason to require that of these neighbors. They may find it annoying if the dogs get agitated. They might not want to set them off if it causes barking. But I don't think there's any reason why any other person using this property should be constricted because of a non-conforming use. Surface drainage, like I think I've addressed that. We have a lot of stuff to deal with, and we're trying to fix the problems, but there are problems that exist right now. There are no wetlands. We've had a study done, and we would never develop a property without making adequate provision for the wetlands, even if there were ones shown. Mr. Jeffries made a comment about it's going to be a problem for the schools. Well, the school is our seller, and we're happy to talk to them anytime about any issues that they have with the construction process. And address that. We want to be good neighbors, and we have a very good working relationship with the school. The traffic concerns, I would say I've driven up this, and the school has mostly improved both sides of the roads with passing blisters and axle decel lanes, and so it's really wide for the length of our frontage already. But we will install additional axle decel lanes at our entrances, and we'll bring that southern entrance, which is now just a drive, we'll bring it to town standards in terms of axle decel lanes on it. And if passing blisters are required, we'll put those in too on the middle school property across the street. So it should be several lanes wide for the amount of our frontage, at least. So that, let me see what else. That should address that. Oh, Mr. Whalen mentioned not limiting customer access. They also have a very large frontage on the kennel parcel, and I can't imagine that our construction zone limits for adding axle diesel lanes and passing blisters on Dan Jones would impact their drive such that people could not get in there. I just can't imagine that. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to address them. Otherwise, I'd ask for approval of this primary plat.
Questions for the petitioner?
And I forgot to mention, I also have Brandon Burke here from HWC if you have more technical questions. And I forgot to introduce Dave Compton from Pulte too, so I'll make that belated introduction.
So I did have a question from your presentation. You had mentioned in a meeting with the Forest Commons HOA that they asked you for the second access on Newberry Road.
Yes.
Specifically for that, so that they could traverse the development and get into the school.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Would you entertain changing the name of this Goodbye Circle to another name?
Yes. The reason I put in there, so the streets here are named after parks in Aspen, Colorado. One of them was Yellow Brick Park. So there's a Yellow Brick Road. And my husband being the enormous Elton John fan that he is, I had to have a corner of Goodbye and Yellow Brick Road. But I'll be happy to change that name.
Are there any further questions for the petitioner?
How does this development compare to the other two that you've done on 100 North?
The other two that I've done on 100 North?
Brownstone?
Brookstone, yeah.
Brookstone?
Well, Brookstone was a little before my time, so I may have to ask Dave to help with that one. I know that the landing series that we are building at Brookstone will be the home series that we are building in this subdivision. In terms of Rivendell, I think, well, this one's obviously a bit larger in terms of number of lots than Rivendell, but it's also got more mass and less topographical constraint. But and two entrances onto the road and connections with another subdivision. But in terms of the lot sizes, that's basically the same as Rivendell. But again, this is a very different, I think, design than Rivendell. So do you want to address Brookstone?
Would you consider barricading the Buttercup Court Road during construction, so that would further prevent any construction traffic into Forest Commons?
I think I might already have that in the commitment.
For the record, David Compton, yes, we could consider a temporary barricade there. We'll work with the town, Greg. My only concern is we had this situation in Brownsburg on a different project. When we put the barriers there, the concrete barriers, it caused some issues with the police department. So we'll agree to coordinate with the town manager and town staff, but we can do something along there. As far as communities wise, these are a little bit wider lots than Brookstone, similar architectural standards proposed. That one had curvilineal design. This is a little different design. One unique thing I think with this product in this location, with just talking to Brandon, I think we'll be able to offer Greg a third car garage on a lot of these lots, which will be nice. That'll be an extra thing available to people, along with a 4-foot bump on every one, which I think will be something we haven't been able to offer in some of the other communities. So extra storage for bikes and lawnmowers and other things beyond the standard.
On a 60-foot wide block?
I did not have the barricade in my covenants or in my commitments, but as Dave said, we're willing to do that.
Any further questions for the petitioner? Okay, thank you. Discussion.
President Ransberg, could I clarify one thing?
Yes.
I neglected to state in my presentation regarding the kennel. It is not legal non-conforming. It is there by variance through the county. It was granted in 1984 and then an expansion in 1990. I did a lot of research on it because the northern building is built right up to the property line, and the western gravel parking storage area is also right up to the property line. So I wanted to know if they were meeting their development plans. The county was unable to find their site plans from those variances, so I don't know if they're compliant. I just want to let you know that it is there legally. We would not ask a residential developer to buffer themselves from a commercial business. We think the commercial business should be buffering itself from the residential development. And then being right up to the property line is concerning, but it's not a requirement of Pulte, and it's not something we would request.
And just to clarify, the kennel is in county?
It is not
property?
annexed, it is in county.
It is not part of Avon, it is in the county?
Correct.
Okay.
I could add one thing on the limits of the kennel design. Our survey actually does show that their fences are over their property line on our property, according to.
Okay, wait, no.
Yeah.
Sorry, I need to use my mom voice occasionally. So, okay, continuing with discussion. And just as a reminder, because this is a plat development request, a plat approval request, and there are no waivers, if the request meets all of the requirements of the ordinances, we are required to approve it by state law. So.
Just make note that we did receive in tonight's meeting a letter that was sent to the staff objecting in remonstrance against this development.
Looks like we have two.
Listed several of the issues we heard tonight: traffic, congestion, size of lots compared to Forest Commons. This is from a Forest Commons resident. And then impact on traffic into the neighborhood. And it's interesting because it's about concern about traffic going into the Forest Commons neighborhood. And we just heard that the HOA wanted the road cut to be able to use that. So just.
Sir?
So I
Sir?
just wanted to make sure that this was read into the record.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I have a question for staff. Is there a long-term plan to widen North Dan Jones?
I'm probably not the best person to answer that question because our DPW department isn't here. Greg, are you aware?
So I can speak to the construction improvements related to the development, and the ordinance and the construction standards do require left turn lanes, taper lengths, lane shifts, et cetera, to accommodate the new access points that they're putting in. As far as a carte blanche road widening, I can't speak to that either, but I can tell you that the necessary improvements that are required for the construction standards have been identified, which include a turn lane, not a passing blister.
While you have the microphone, Greg, talk about drainage in general.
Yeah, so as indicated, in general, it does flow to the west into the county jurisdiction, and we identified in our first letter that they've got to coordinate with Dave Gaston, who's the county surveyor, and get Hendricks County Drainage Board approval as well. That being said, anything related to the town standards at a preliminary plat stage, they've addressed our comments. We had some downstream restriction questions that they researched and identified, commented on. And then there were some drawdown times in the detention. So release rates, watersheds, all that. And I'm not going to say 30,000 feet. We might be at about 10,000 feet right now at primary plat stage, have been sorted out and do meet primary plat requirements. Now, I will say, depending on how your conversations go with Mr. Gaston, there may be a switch up or change or something, but again, that's going to be detailed engineering and construction drawings, and we'll be looking at that as that gets sorted out. From this standpoint, for tonight's meeting, they meet the requirements.
The situation involving discovering that the drainage pipe had been installed incorrectly and heading the wrong direction, I guess. Do you have anything to offer or any insight onto that? And that involves the county as well, correct?
It will be 100% the county, and it will need to be fixed for the design that they've got proposed, leaving Avon. That's going to have to get fixed in the county. So I'll be working in close coordination with Greg on that as well. Or David, not Greg. David
right.
Getz.
Okay.
So it's safe to say, because there's a town jurisdiction and a county jurisdiction, that at the end of the day, they will cooperate and work together and make certain it's done the correct way.
Yes, we've been good at doing that, and I believe staff's boiler commitment with motion to approve is that all of our comments are addressed, which include Hendricks County Surveyor, if I'm not mistaken.
Any further discussion with regards to this proposal agenda item? It's nice to see something in front of us that doesn't have a waiver request, I should say. If there's no further discussion, we can entertain a motion.
One further question, just to staff that, and so this does meet all the requirements, meets all of our requirements, correct?
It does, yes.
No waivers.
No waivers.
Therefore, it's ministerial.
Correct.
They did offer some commitments. Do we need to note those?
The only additional commitment that,
The road construction, I think.
the only additional commitment I think that's not included in this that I heard was the blockage.
Right.
Block off better.
Right.
They talked about disclosures for the residents as well.
Excuse me?
Disclosures for the kennel. They talked about that as well.
Maybe we can have the petitioner come forward and confirm the commitments that you're willing to make. Just so that we're clear.
So I've given you two before this meeting. There is a provision dealing with construction traffic, but I need to add some language in there about barricades. So I will add that language. Commissioner Zuzan asked me to change goodbye circle. I will change that. And then the disclosures about the kennel. And then there's rental restrictions in the commitments as well. So the two that I'm adding, I'm modifying commitment number one in the existing commitments that I've given you to add language about barricades. I'll remove goodbye circle and I will add a paragraph 3. No. I will add a new paragraph 3 to the commitments that has language about disclosures of the kennel operations.
Okay, thank you. So how do we put that in the motion?
I'm not sure what the wording is there for what was just stated.
They are making commitments, which they will draft and submit to the town, where they'll be approved and then recorded. So as long as you just mention the commitments previously mentioned and those approved during the meeting, that would be sufficient.
Like previously agreed to commitments?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, having cleared that up, we'll entertain a motion.
I will move that we approve MAPP 241111 Aspen Trace Major Subdivision Primary Plat, or preliminary plat to divide 76.94 acres into 129 single-family detached lots and one block, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report and to commitments previously written and those committed to during this meeting.
I'll second.
He needs to finish.
Since it has satisfied all the requirements for a major subdivision preliminary plat under state law and subject to the approved findings of fact.
Now you can second.
I will second Kurt.
Okay, having heard a motion and a second, we'll now take a vote.
Rockerbrand,
4.
Spencer,
4.
Reed,
4.
Kaufman,
4.
Ransberg,
4.
Guggenberger,
4.
Zuzen.
4.
Motion carries and the plat is approved. Okay, moving on to Silver Springs. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is Silver Springs.
You want to keep going?
Actually, let's take a short recess. Everyone take your seats, please. Thank you, sir. All right. Wow, the room cleared out, didn't it? Okay, here we go. We're moving on to agenda item for the Silver Springs preliminary map.
Okay, thank you again. This is also a preliminary plat for Silver Springs. Silver Springs, unlike Aspen Trace, is more familiar to you because it went through the rezoning process over the past 3 or 4 months, whereas the other one came in as what it was owned and did not go through the rezoning process. Silver Springs is at 900 East and 200 North. It's about a quarter of a mile north of that intersection, 45.95 acres. It is now zoned R3. It is unimproved. It was annexed in the town in 2003. The rezoning was approved by town council on December 5th, approximately a week and a half ago. They are requesting preliminary plat approval to divide that acreage into 74 single-family detached lots and 101 townhome lots. That's exactly what you saw on the preliminary plans filed at the rezoning stage, and they are not requesting any waivers. Lennar Homes is the petitioner tonight. This is a subject site. Here's the intersection of 900 and 200. And it is these 45 acres here. The red line is the division line between Avon and Brownsburg. Sephora is currently being built here, and there's a new road Sephora lane that would come out right in here. They propose to access County Road 900 via a new intersection, which would line up with where Sephora is putting their intersection in. It would continue on over into this stub here known as Autumn Faith Way within the Heathermore subdivision. Heathermore is the adjacent property or subdivision to the west. There will be an additional connection to a brand new subdivision that is occurring to the north in Brownsburg. So they have approved a stub street that will line up with the one shown on these plans. The single-family homes are consistent with the R3 standards. This is not under the enhanced standards that we talked about before. It was filed after the change in the UDO. The minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet for single-family, 60-foot wide lot width, and then the townhome is 1,500 square feet with a 20-foot lot width. Sidewalks are going to be installed throughout, and then an asphalt path along 900. In this case, the UDO requires a 10% open space in R3, and 23.1% open space is proposed. This is the layout, should look familiar to you. The single family here to the north, the pond on the west abutting Heathermore, the new connection with 900 here, continuing through and connecting to the stub street over here. There is the Bicentennial Trail, which abuts the site to the west, and there is proposed a full crossing of that street. So the trail will be done at grade with a typical trail crossing and a light also installed. And then the townhome section is here. In my staff report, I talked about this parking area here. This is the amenity section, right? So the pool, playground, that sort of thing. And I talked about the parking not meeting standards. The petitioner has been made aware of that and is proposing changes that will be on the final plat, and they don't foresee any issues complying with the standards. And then the other issue I brought up in the staff report is the roads within the southern portion of the townhomes not being public right of way. And it appeared from my review of the plat that they were showing as public right of way, and we did not want that, that it should be private. They confirmed that it is supposed to be private, and it was just how it was shown on the plat, that it's to be an easement and not right of way. So they will correct those identifying marks on the final plat.
So just clarification, Autumn Faith Way is a town dedicated road,
Correct.
but then going into the townhomes, that is not.
Correct. So our recommendation is approval of this plat. It does comply with all the standards of the UDO. The petitioner also made zoning commitments, as you remember, and it does comply with all of the zoning commitments made at the zoning stage. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Just to confirm, there's no waivers being requested, correct?
Correct.
So the roads in the townhome section will not be dedicated to the town.
Correct.
Will they be built to town standards though? So at a future point in time, if they want to dedicate them to the town, they will be built to our standards.
So the UDO has requirements for how the construction of the road is required. As far as the width and full dedication of right of way, I don't know if that amount of roadway would be in there. I don't think it would comply. There are private street standards within the ordinance. It does not necessarily meet our road standards.
Could we require that commitment or not? I mean, who knows? They may or they may not ask the town to take them over. I'm assuming they're going to have like an HOA that is going to
Correct.
maintain those.
Correct.
But at some future point in time, when they become deteriorated, that's when they're going to call the town and say, hey, we want you to take over these roads. That's just my question.
I mean, typically, they don't want them to be designed. I mean, the way they're designed, you'll see that each driveway accesses, it's more like an access drive and not a full street, and our standards would not allow that. So we would have to grant several waivers of our street standards in order to accept them.
Another question on the Autumn Faith Way, where that road will go into Heathermore. Will they make that a temporary barricade for no construction traffic through that subdivision as well under construction?
We did not ask for that. The petitioner may be willing to
And then
answer.
my last question, your northern road access into a development in Brownsburg, what happens if Brownsburg doesn't allow our development to have access into their development? Now we only have one egress ingress.
Well, Autumn Faith Way would be another one, but we have coordinated with Brownsburg and Lennar, quite frankly, is coordinated with Brownsburg on the location of that. And both Brownsburg and Avon are aware of where that connection would be and that the connection's going to happen.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any further questions for staff?
With this private road, is there enough access with fire district to, they approve the turn radiuses and everything as needed?
The requirements of the private street standards are that they meet turning radiuses for the larger vehicles. I don't know if the fire department has seen specifically this layout, but they're required to be part of the approval process during final plat and construction.
Okay.
And I doubt that this would have been designed the way it's been done, and I'm sure the petitioner can speak to it, if they wouldn't get approval from the fire department.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the petitioner? Or for staff, rather, sorry. Okay, we'll have the petitioner come forward.
Good evening. Wow. Steve Brehab with Banning Engineering. I'm filling in for my compadre, Mark Meyerholtz, this evening, representing the petitioner Lennar. Um, I'd like to thank the planning staff and town council for working with us and Lennar on this through the rezone process to put together a plan that was not just the same single-family residential subdivision, no offense to the one that we just heard previous, but had a diverse offering of residential products. So with single-family to the north and then the townhomes to the south. We all know further to the south is the Meyer development. So we felt like the townhomes component provided a really good buffer between single-family and then the more intense commercial to the south. The townhomes will be multi-story, so not only provide a visual, but a sound buffer then to the commercial to the south. Couple clarifications. The road to the north, that is a connection out of the Avon jurisdiction and into Brownsburg. The preliminary plat for the project to the north has already been approved through Brownsburg, and they're currently going through their construction plan review. So I don't have any fear that that road connection would not be permitted or approved. And actually, Lennar is actively working with Davis Homes, who's doing the project to the north, on coordination items of who's building the sewer, who's building the water, who's building the road, how far. So all of those things work together. So I think it's both developers and both the town and Brownsburg's intent that that road functions seamlessly, and you don't know that you went from Brownsburg to Avon or Avon to Brownsburg. The connection to Heathermore will be a public roadway, and I think we can agree, as was stated in the petition before ours, that we can barricade that access in some form or fashion to limit construction traffic. Again, with the blessing of emergency service providers. The private drive within the townhome portion of the project, the pavement widths meet town requirements, but the road design itself, as Linda had mentioned, would not be conducive to being a public street. It does not have sidewalks on both sides. And if you think of an alley loaded type townhome project, you've got driveway, 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 driveway. So it just really wouldn't be real conducive to being a public roadway. But the pavement thickness, the travel lane widths would be appropriate for public roadway. We went through TAC on this, and I don't recall any comments from the fire department regarding difficulty in access. And of course, it's incumbent upon us to design it so that it meets minimum turning radiuses to provide for fire safety. With that being said, I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you have this evening. Thank you.
Before we go into questions, we're going to go to the remonstrance. Is there anybody who has signed up in support of this project, to speak in support of this project other than the petitioner? If not, has anybody signed up to speak, to remonstrate against this project?
Does not look like anyone who signed up has indicated they were here for Silver Springs.
Is there anybody else present who would like to speak out against this project?
I wrote a letter earlier, brought it in this morning.
Okay.
But my statement's really there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, having no one wishing to come forward in support or against this project, I guess there's nothing for the petitioner to rebut. So we will go ahead and, if you can come forward, we'll address questions to the petitioner.
I could ask a question. Randy Todd, is that okay? So just his point that we received a letter today, it's on our desk about his concerns.
Has the petitioner seen a copy of that letter? Does he want to make any?
Well, so good point. So the points here are traffic and infrastructure concerns, that the road system would be strained with the addition of 175 new residential units. Environmental impact with light and noise pollution that would be created with the development. privacy issues, density of the proposed project will compromise privacy currently enjoyed by the existing residents in Heathermore. Concerned about the developer's reputation, and it references rating on consumer affairs and a large number of one-star ratings. And then they're urging the town for considering a thorough trip generation traffic impact study and plan for infrastructure upgrades, measures to mitigate light and noise pollution, such as sound barriers and light control regulations, privacy assurances, possibly through redesigning building placements, writing privacy screens, and a review of the developer's history to ensure they are capable of developing a project that meets our community standards. So that's what you might have heard in a comment.
Okay, I can address some of those. Traffic and infrastructure concerns. There was a traffic study done that not only took this project into account, but the Davis project to the north into account, and a townhome project even further north on 900 into account, plus the industrial development on the east side of the road. It was pretty extensive traffic study. We are including improvements to 900 that were identified in that study. And I believe long-range planning is to get the intersection to the north on the MPO for construction of a roundabout within, that'd be town of Brownsburg jurisdiction. So I think traffic improvements are on everybody's radar, and I think that they've been accounted for with this development. Environmental impacts, with regards to drainage, we're required to meet certain very restrictive requirements, and I'm sure that we'll be able to meet those. Light and night sky type things, I think if you look at the development that's a little bit further to the east of 900, it's all large logistics type buildings. I think this would probably be a better neighbor to the neighborhood as opposed to the logistics buildings. The developer reputation, Lennar builds over 80,000 homes a year. So I think that the negative reviews are part and parcel to the amount of homes that you build, and that's a pretty low number, I think.
Privacy concerns, I guess
Privacy concerns, if you look at the design, we've got a rather large pond between the proposed neighborhood and the existing neighborhood, and you also have to take into account that you've got a 50, 60 some foot swath in there that's the trail as well. So the development's not immediately adjacent to the residential area.
Like in the townhomes, any external lighting, I believe you're going to have to comply to light, I call it light pollution, but main lighting requirements so that there is not excessive light being shown and dispersed. It's not commercial development where we have control.
And the townhomes, you know, you're going to have a light on somebody's front door. You're going to have a light by their garage, and you'll probably have a couple lights through the roadway system. It's not going to be an extensive amount of lights. Certainly will be much less than the Meyer to the south.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the petitioner? Okay, thank you. Discussion? And just as a reminder, this is a ministerial action. As long as the town finds that it has met our staff is, as long as the board finds that we have met the ordinance standards, we are required to approve this by state law. Discussion? You can have a seat. Sorry. I will say I'm glad to see the introduction of something other than apartments or single-family homes being brought to Avon. One of the things we've talked about with the future planning of Avon is introducing a variety of residential types, including townhomes.
I think the design here takes in consideration, you got the commercial development with Meyer, and that's always been an issue of what to develop right near large commercial developments. So they have townhomes. It's not apartments, it's more townhomes. Yeah, I understand the concern about traffic. That is a concern. I appreciate the explanation of the construction and the thoughts around 900. I know that's been something that's been discussed with the Sephora development too. And 200 North has been improved to handle additional traffic. And it's going to get more because there's going to be more development. So I just thought it was a unique design having the townhomes there to address that, not having single family homes right beside a commercial development.
Those transition pieces between residential and commercial are always tricky, or they can be tricky. You know, how do you make that transition from residential to commercial? And I think this is a nice presentation for that. Any further discussion with regards to this agenda item? If there's no further discussion, we'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve MAP P24-14 Silver Springs, a major subdivision preliminary plat to divide 45.95 acres into 74 single-family detached lots and 101 single-family attached townhouse lots, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, since it has satisfied all the requirements for a major subdivision preliminary plat under state law and subject to the approved findings of fact.
I'll second.
Having had a motion and a second, we'll now take a vote.
Reed.
4.
Spencer.
4.
Rockabrand.
4.
Kaufman. 4. Ransberg.
4.
Guckenberger.
4.
Zuzen.
4.
Motion carries and the plat is approved. Preliminary plat is approved. Going on to, do we have any other business from staff? No? Committee reports. BZA is meeting tomorrow, so we can't tell you what's going to happen. Any other reports?
In addition to RDC's approval of invoices this evening, we also looked at the Civic Center GMP and proposed schedule, engagement letters for Civic Center bonds as well, in addition to awarding quotes for a police station remodel and approval of 2025 meeting schedule.
Okay. Anything from the town?
No.
Okay. Is there anything else for the good of the order? In that case, I would like to wish everyone a happy and safe and healthy holiday. And as I say, we'll see you next year. Meeting adjourned.